Hi everyone, my name is Somaya Sadat. I'm the Assistant Director at the Center for Analytics and AI Engineering within the University of Toronto's Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering. Thank you everyone for joining us for our second seminar in the Carte Industry Speaker Seminar Series. I'm here today with my colleague Alex Olson, who is our resident AI ML expert and our research associate. And we have two panelists today, Baiwu Zhang and Christine Yuen. Welcome to you both from the Bank of Montreal AI Capabilities team. We are going to talk about AI applications in the financial industry in general. But before we start the seminar, and while we're waiting for a few more people to join, I just thought that I'll give you all a quick intro to what we do at the Center for Analytics and AI Engineering. And then we could go and introduce our panelists and start the seminar today. The seminar is a conversational style seminar, so if you have any questions throughout the seminar, feel free to ask in the chat box. And if you like to, we could actually unmute you and you could ask yourself, or we would just read the questions for you. And there is also would be time for you at the end of the seminar to ask questions as well. The seminar is being recorded and would be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. So with that, I'm going to give you a quick overview of Carte. Carte stands for Center for Analytics and AI Engineering. Carte is actually the hub for analytics and AI translation at U of T's Faculty of Engineering and Applied Science, which is, as you probably know, the #1 engineering school in Canada. We aim to combine analytics and AI expertise with sector-specific knowledge, and we enable successful applications of AI and analytics across industries. So we have 6 innovation clusters within the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering: robotics, advanced manufacturing, sustainability, water, human health. And then there is data analytics and AI, which sort of cuts across all of them. So at a glance, we have 90 faculty affiliate members from across the engineering departments and units: chemical engineering, civil and mineral, electrical and computer engineering, Institute of Biomedical Engineering, mechanical industrial engineering, material science engineering, the University of Toronto Institute for Aerospace Studies, and the Interdisciplinary Teaching Institute. They apply AI and analytics across various sectors. And on campus, we are housed at the My Hall Center for Engineering and Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So who are we? As I mentioned, my name is Somaya Sadat. I'm Assistant Director. Alex Olson is our Research Associate and in-house AI/LM expert. Our Director is Professor Tim Chan from the Mechanical and Industrial Engineering Department, and we have 5 steering committee members who guide us at the strategic level from across engineering disciplines. We really have 3 pillars: research, education and training, and partnership. In research, we try to connect analytics and AI researchers with domain-specific experts. We provide seed funding for high-impact multidisciplinary research. We will be starting a research seminar series, which is different from this seminar series that you're attending right now. And we hold research drop-in clinics. Alex actually runs those for graduate students who need help with research. On the education and training side, we are just about to launch our analytics and AI pathways of courses across the university. For those of you who really don't know what courses to take and how to plan your studies at U of T, those would be very helpful. We are building an analytics and AI community of practice among the students. We will be starting hands-on workshops, and we facilitate experiential learning for students as well as retraining opportunities for those in the workforce. And on the industry partnership front, so we seek sponsored applied research projects. We provide analytics and AI consulting to our partners. We run these industry speaker seminars, so this is the second of this series. We provide executive and technical training to our industry partners. We will be post-COVID probably hosting some industry events and support industry to recruit talent from U of T. And our industry partners, again, post-COVID era, would have access to a desk in our headquarters for our actual partners. And we support our industry partners to leverage funds from government sources for longer-term projects, research projects. So to learn more about our center, make sure you visit our website, and there is a button to subscribe to our email list. You can also contact us at carte@utoronto.ca, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, and you can also subscribe to our Carte YouTube channel. So with that, I'm going to stop the introduction to Carte and actually introduce our panelists today. And thank you both for joining us today. So we have Christine Yuen and Baiwu Zhang from the Bank of Montreal AI Capabilities team. Christine graduated with a Master's of Applied Computing at the University of Toronto with a focus in machine learning and statistics. In her previous work at Deloitte, she worked on deep language models for automatic contract analysis. Currently, she's working as a research developer at BMO AI and leading an enterprise AI capabilities initiative where she and her colleagues implement and bring deep learning models and capabilities to teams across the bank. She's always thrilled to learn more from others in the field, as well as to share some of the things she's learned while working in the AI industry. And Baiwu Zhang. Baiwu graduated from the University of Toronto's Electrical and Computer Engineering Department with a Master's of Engineering and a bachelor's degree. He studied the intersection of machine learning and computer security with a focus on privacy-preserving machine learning. As an applied AI researcher at BMO, Baiwu currently works on bridging the gap between cutting-edge ML research and banking initiatives. So thank you both for joining us today. We really appreciate that. So to start, thanks. So to start the conversation, I already briefly introduced you two, but could you maybe more thoroughly introduce yourself? Anything you'd like to highlight about your background, your current position, and any other relevant positions you have held in the past? Maybe starting with you, or Christine, starting with you.
Yeah, sure, thanks. I know that introduction was great. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, not too much more to add, but I have a focus mostly on NLP work recently, although our team does deal with a lot of time series work and recently some computer vision as well, as you can imagine with some of the checks. But yeah, no, mostly for the Deloitte work and for BMO, it's about, I guess, implementing and also figuring out how to bring these models into production and get them actually used for business cases.
Awesome. And Baiwu?
Yeah, so I graduated from, I spent 6 years at U of T engineering department, so it's really back to be back. As Sumesh introduced me, I work on some initiatives about privacy preserving machine learning at the bank. As you know, this becoming a major thing of how we push forward those technologies and utilize more data for our AI analytics. Definitely happy to talk about more of that in the talk. Yeah, previously I also had a few internships at tech companies like Microsoft and like Qualcomm. So I kind of see the difference between those industries, and also definitely willing to talk about the differences here.
Thanks.
Great, thank you both so much for being here. So you both kind of briefly mentioned it there, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how AI is currently used in the whole financial industry, both within Canada and internationally.
Yeah, I will give an overview of how we envision AI is used currently. So there are three major areas that we think AI is used currently in banking and financial industries. The first is reduce of the cost. This basically means AI can really automate some of the things that are done manually before and reduce the cost and increase efficiency for the bank in general. You know, like in banking, lots of the work are human facing, and you need a lot of human efforts to process checks or financial documentations. So NLP work is, as example, is very interesting to us to reduce the cost of those such works. The second thing we think is really important is AI technology can really boost revenues through multiple channels. One of the very interesting thing that everyone is pushing for is personalization of personalization of financial products. Basically, if a customer comes to our bank and with his or her scenario, how do we recommend the best product for him or her, or how do we offer the best advice from our side that can really help the customer to achieve their financial goals? Those include like cross-selling from our different products. Also, we can provide a fine-grained analysis on the customer behavior from his or her previous transactional data. So being more personalized, be more able to provide products on a fine-grained level is one way that AI can help the bank and financial industry to boost their revenue. And the third part is more on the long run is, AI can really create a lot more revenue streams for us. As you may heard from the news, Apple have those Apple Card, and Google is also launching a product, I guess yesterday, that they offer checking accounts and saving accounts now. So those kind of things.
Heard about that.
Oh yeah, it's really big actually. So I don't know if that's a threat opportunity for BMO like in specific, but it's definitely a trend where the financial industry is moving towards. So more and more technology companies joining us, and AI can really help make the customer experience better and also like strengthen our ability in this field. Christine I will pass on Christine to give some examples on how how products are being used like employ BMO on these specific areas.
Great.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think for each of those, and these are just really some of the projects that we've touched on or we've, I guess, sort of seen around the bank, but there's definitely many more. In terms of reduction, I guess, cost reduction and automation, like just for our team alone, I know we've seen, like Baiwu said, we've got like check or different types of documents that we're trying to process. I mean, large volumes of documents really, and extracting I guess, meaningful information from them. So almost creating structured data from a whole bunch of unstructured text, right? I mean, in the case of checks and documents, they do have a structure, but the format can be different. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely the sense of creating apps for customers, like very customer-based, personalized products, like maybe predicting or helping you forecast what your cash flow is going to look like. And then some of the more personalized products like recommending a good card for you based on your previous spending, based on what kinds of, let's say, rewards and things you're looking for. So that's definitely all AI work as well. Another one that's really cool is like the customer service experience can be improved for, it's not just about necessarily generating revenue now, it's like it's actually making your experience better so that people want to stay with the bank and they have a good time. And also to analyze their feedback really, because it comes in a lot of different formats. So it's very important that we're able to sort of digest that and then create better products based on that. And then, yeah, like Baiwu said, the new revenue streams is always really interesting because there's some products that may not even exist. So we can find the best one for you based on what we have. But then, I mean, going back to the feedback as well, it's like, how can we even create new products that are a better fit for all the customers? That's also a huge thing. Of course, there's, I guess, and there's always the capital markets, and there's always the trade execution portion of that. And there are specific teams in the bank that are looking at that. But I mean, really, we just wanted to give examples of how it can be used in so many other ways that maybe aren't just the first thing that you think about when you think of AI in banking and finance.
Sure. So it sounds like AI is already pretty deeply ingrained into banking. With that in mind, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the longer term trends that you see in sort of AI in the financial industry.
Okay. Yeah, I will talk about like one thing like we think is really important to longer term of how AI would work in banking. One thing is like I know in academic right now there's huge push for explainable AI, where we need to be able to explain how AI make this, how machine learning algorithms make this decision based on what feature, based on what criteria, and also if we want to modify the decision, how do we do that? How do we make a machine learning model achieve the goal we want to achieve? So we have the very similar problems to deploy machine learning model at banking, because we as a bank we are providing products for human, right? We are making very important decisions for our customers as human. We need to make sure the machine learning algorithms achieve what we want to achieve, instead of just being a black box where we give them an input and it give us an output without knowing what's going on inside. So we really need to understand. We need to make sure the machine learning algorithm is explainable, as it will, as that's a very important criteria actually for us to push the machine learning model inside of our business. For example, like right now the model we have at BMO is, we develop a model as a machine learning developer, but that will be integrated with the business team where they will actually analyze our model to make sure it's properly validated, it's properly achieve the criteria they want to achieve, and so it can be deployed in production. To do that, those machine learning models have to be digested and separated, analyzed against some benchmarks, against various different criteria. So we need to make sure that it can actually be used. The other big trend that we are pushing towards is the trustworthiness of machine learning algorithms. As Christine mentioned, in examples where you're using models for trading, we have to have some confidence in the output of the model to make sure it won't produce anything that's outside of the bound that we're designed for. So it's not giving us any surprises, which is not something people at banking really likes. Achieve that really requires the machine learning, all the model, not only machine learning model, but the entire system actually, because machine learning model is only part of the system. Really requires a deep understanding of how the model works and what can impact the model. And if there's adversarial, if there's someone intentionally want to mess around with us, how do we prevent that from happening? So these are currently being explored by us and also by others in the industry and around the around the academic world as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that too. I think we really need to, in addition to, I guess, investing in explainability, trustworthiness, there's also the notion of privacy preservation. So as you can imagine, working with customers' data, I mean, the bank is I guess a vast, has so much data to work with, a lot of it which is sort of confidential customer data. So we have to be very careful that we're still preserving privacy, especially where there's consent to share, where can we even use data, or what kinds of data are we allowed to use to train our model while preserving the privacy and ethical requirements. And another aspect is really focusing on how it impacts the future. So, I mean, even though the bank is often, I would say, maybe a little bit cautious about, I guess, adopting new methods, the bank has already done a lot of work on AI. And I mean, as the cases that we mentioned before, it's already been, I guess, AI has been adopted in many different lines of businesses, and it's sort of really tightly integrated with the bank systems now. But one of the things is really looking forward. How are we going to impact the future by doing some social good? So we already see that the bank is sort of identifying and focusing on underrepresented groups in banking. For example, maybe with focusing on women in business, mitigating bias for risk modeling or adjudication, things like that, and also using AI to address climate issues. So I guess this is really the way of the future, and it's very encouraging to see these emerging topics. So I wouldn't say early. I mean, it's actually a great time. It's always a good time to be addressing these things. But yeah, really having these themes come from the financial industry is a really good sign that we're headed in the right direction, I think. And then in terms of how we actually, I guess, enhance the adoption of AI in finance, I think a lot of it has to do with the approach. So one of the ways that we found works pretty well is creating reusable capabilities, which means trying to build some I guess for every person that, or maybe every researcher that comes up with a state-of-the-art method, you need a lot of people to apply that to various fields or lines of businesses to generate revenue for the bank. And then from that, we also have to have a lot of people who, I guess for every one of those, there's more teams that are there to deploy them so that they're actually used. So sort of bridging, I guess, bridging the gap between academia and lines of businesses and specific use cases, it's very important that we build reusable models. So if we were to, let's say, one example is train a deep language model, actually, which our team has done with Vector. So now that we have this model, we can sort of see all the different use cases across the bank that might be similar in functionality, and we can almost like reuse that. So part of the responsibility of our team is like delivering what could be state of the art to the bank and doing it in a sort of efficient way. We need to make it reusable. So that's, I mean, that's part of the challenge, and that's also part of the work and where we see this going in the future.
Awesome, very interesting to learn how AI is actually already adopted and how it could be adopted in the longer term. Just wondering, are there any challenges in adopting AI from a technical point of view? Would any, yeah, Baiwu?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's definitely a lot of challenges. It's not a very easy task for us to push for such technology-centered like product inside of people presenting as more conservative or more traditional industry. So definitely there's technical challenges. Like as I touched on before, the explainability is actually a big challenge that we need to focus on. For example, if you want to use the AI model, machine learning model to adjudicate someone's loans or someone's credit card, we need to really be able to provide explanation on whether, on why the reasoning we reject that person's application or approve that person's application. That's on one side, that's actually required by regulations. Banking always has a strict regulation across many industries. So we are required to provide a customer explanation if they asked why we make the decision. And also second, it's not a requirement, but in order to build the trust with our customers, the AI model we are using have to provide explanation as well. So we need to make sure the customer understand like what areas they are being judged for the adjudication, and if they get rejected, we need to provide recommendations on for example, you have to increase your credit score for the next 6 months or something in order for us to approve your credit card. So those kind of abilities are really important. And I think a lot of models right now are deep learning models especially are lacking. So they don't really have the ability for us to pinpoint what is the factor that affected this judgment. Yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing is the infrastructure is also a very challenging part for us to push for any AI based solutions. Basically, the banking relies on and I don't know if you read the news, but banking, some of the bank relies on codes that are written in the 1960s, and it's still working now, but surprisingly, yeah. So there's a lot of legacy systems in the bank that is proven to be very robust actually and very efficient and is working. But if you want to integrate an AI system, a machine learning system to it, there will be one there will be concerns on whether those systems are robust as the previous one. Also, there will be resistance on deploying such things. So, it's really a hard challenge for the bank to entirely move to something entirely modern. That's why all the ML solutions we are working on need to be very flexible in how it can be deployed, either on-prem or on cloud. One property of that is it need to be very efficient. We cannot run, like for example, GPT-3 model, which we have millions or billions of parameters on our production cloud, which is definitely not feasible. So sometimes dealing with those very complex models, we have either to retrain the model to make it smaller, or we have to look at other solutions that might have inferior performance, but with much better computational cost associated with it. So yeah, those kind of points are really technical points that are sometimes hindering our push for deploying those. And also, like, I mean, in banking, this also goes back to what is required for banking, which is reliability and explainability and robustness. We cannot always chase the Christian mentioned the state of art of what the research does, because in machine learning you have a paper on the same project every 3 months at least, right? So we cannot always chase the best performance, the state of art. We have to pick what is stable, what is usable, and also what is tested already, what is verified, that properly vetted. So we have to be really careful in choosing what we want to take from the research into our production. And yeah, and associated with that is research models are not evaluated on real data, so we need to do the evaluation again and properly to see whether that is fitted for our goal or not. So
I see.
Yeah.
Very interesting point you brought around the infrastructure for me. So I wonder if banks which are not as old, so maybe they have newer systems, maybe at an advantage here. So we have newer banks in the scene, internet banks even. So they could indeed have an advantage from an infrastructure perspective, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges are there. I guess the challenge of regulation and the challenge of, yeah, perhaps I think in terms of infrastructure, it might be easier just to integrate if, for example, it's already a cloud-based solution. Like how easy is it to, I mean, it would be way easier to add sort of something that mirrors that structure, or it just fits, right? But I think one of the, I wouldn't say if this is like necessarily a pro or a con, but one of the parts of the challenges, which is that it's sort of difficult to get it integrated without first going through all the proper channels and making sure everything's like well regulated and checked over, vetted. I mean that's actually somewhat of a good point, right? Because if we can make sure that the models are properly vetted, even if it takes a longer time, like that's how you get longer lasting models in the system. So I think that's probably a challenge that all industries or all, regardless of old or new, have to go through. But that's not, I mean, it's a challenge in a technical sense, but I don't think it's a challenge for like the financial sector as a whole. I think it's definitely a good thing. As a customer, I definitely feel a lot safer and a lot more confident in the systems that are or have gone through the whole process.
Fair.
Yeah.
And are there other maybe regulatory challenges that are specific to the financial industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think a lot of processes like, for example, I guess anti-money laundering, things like loan adjudication, risk modeling, and all of that. There's a lot of structure and there's a lot of regulations specific to those, I guess, those businesses, which I guess as modeling people, we don't necessarily worry about right away. But as we learn more about the use cases and we actually try to do modeling for those different areas, we realize there's a lot of regulations that we have to respect. And yeah, of course, like I mentioned before, even with things that aren't specifically, I guess they don't have a specific regulation, like you're not allowed to use this data. There's always the notion of like consent to share for customers' data, right? And also, maybe not from a specific regulatory standpoint, but we'd also want to make sure part of improving the customer experience is making sure they get recommendations that they actually like. So for example, if someone doesn't actually want to, or they're very clear about not wanting to open a new account somewhere, maybe even if we think they're a good fit, if they're not really open to that, it's actually detrimental to the customer experience to keep offering the same things. So that's definitely something and a challenge that we'd have to work with, right? And then there's, of course, like incomplete data as well, pretty much stemming from the same issues, because not everyone is open to sharing all of their information. And I mean, that's rightfully so, right? That's definitely still a challenge.
That's all very interesting.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, why don't we zoom in a little bit to learn a little bit more about what your work looks like. So maybe for each of you, what does your job entail, both in a technical sense, but also sort of what non-technical skills do you find that are really important for your jobs? And also, what is the most interesting thing that you're working on?
Definitely, happy to talk about that. So I will envision my work, I separate into three pieces. There's the data handling piece where I need to deal with a lot of data. And then there's the modeling piece where I need to do some research. I need to figure out what's the best model to use, what the feature is. And then there's very huge communication piece where I need to really understand the domain knowledge of how this thing gonna be used in actual business use cases, and also communicating the model, like deliver the model to the business people to make sure like they understand the benefits out of it. They also understand the limitations out of it, so it can be properly installed in their system as well. So the first two pieces are definitely, if you ask me, the students are the most interesting piece, because I really have the opportunity to look at what is going on, like in the, for example, in the industry, how, for example, how COVID is impacting people's borrowing behavior, right? That's something very interesting, and we can get to analyze that and also provide insights out of it to really deliver the machine learning model, to make sure the machine learning model produce the desired output that we want it to have. Basically leveraging upon a huge amount of data and produce insights that can be usable. I would say that's the most interesting part. But also communicating is also very interesting for me, because I got the opportunity to realize how the small change that we're making here on the accuracy can have a really big impact on both our customers as well as our employees, like in the bank. So if, for example, one thing we're working on the call center, right? We can automate the process by using some machine learning model, but we also realize those kind of models actually probably will increase the employee satisfaction with their work, because they will be directed with customers that are supposed to be directed to them. They will not be directed on customers that are asking other questions, will be directed to the person appropriately. So they will save a lot of time by doing context switch, and also just make everyone's life much easier by using those technologies. So I really enjoy actually learning from all the business people, and really learning from the customer data. That's something I really enjoy.
Yeah. Can I ask, just because you were describing your job here, do you at all interact with customers, or are you on the back end?
Yeah, we don't interact with customer directly. We are on the back end, but we do interact with customers' data, and we interact with people that interact with customers.
Okay, so you sort of hear customers' stories secondhand through people who interact with them, right?
Yeah. I'd also consider some of the, one level up, some of the, I guess, customer facing people are our model customers. So
Yeah, sure.
For example, if we're doing recommender systems and then we're providing leads to some of the, various customer facing employees, like often we try to get feedback from them directly. So we ask them, like, does this lead make sense? I mean, it's really, I guess at some point we also have like meetings with, with those people to get more insight into why they think one of the predictions is good or not good. But yeah, I mean, in terms of customers, I guess the bank's customers we don't interact with, but we define our own customers as people like employees of the bank as well.
Valid point, thanks. So yeah, sorry, Christine, I just, you were going to answer the same question, I guess, and I just jumped in. So anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I actually wanted to add 2 points. I mean, yeah, Baiwu has like really summarized it well. Two other things that we also do are really helping with the deployment of the models. So in addition to, I guess, yeah, finding the appropriate models, fine tuning it to the bank's data, or maybe sort of even designing the pipeline for, I guess, various use cases often require more than one model just to solve, or we find just because something is state of the art, once you apply it to real data, sometimes, actually often, the performance is not quite where we need it to be. So we do the additional fine tuning, training, designing the pipeline if we need to have multiple models, and then finally sort of bringing it to production with various development and cloud teams across the bank. So making sure that not just the business people understand the overall of what the model is doing, but also helping helping the deployment teams and development teams really know what they're working with as well.
Awesome.
And then in terms, sorry, in terms of the most interesting parts, I think actually bringing it to life, like bringing models to life, is probably the most interesting part, right? Because yeah, like I said, when a lot of out of the box models who have been very high performing on benchmark data sets don't often do that well when applied to real production data. So actually doing the problem solving, I mean, it sometimes may be stressful, but doing the problem solving is actually a very like dynamic and interesting part of the bank, I guess, doing modeling work at the bank.
Very interesting. So actually building on that question, and a lot of our participants are either students or faculty members who train those students, I'm wondering, do you feel that the university education that you received adequately prepared you for this role? And if not, were there any gaps in the skills that were required for this position and you never learned it at the school, and how did you go about filling those gaps?
Yeah, maybe I'll start this with a little bit of a sales pitch for U of T. So I think, yeah, I mean, so I came from the Masters of Applied Computing at U of T, which I think is a great program because it sort of jointly gives you research, I guess, research courses and also some industry experience by doing applied research partnered with a specific I guess, a specific group that's been vetted for their research projects. So I think the good part of this is a lot of what you learn in coursework is sort of how to read and understand papers, how to keep up, how to interpret academic findings, and how to keep up with the state of the art. But what is really useful is actually applying it to industry, especially when you're sort of supervised by faculty at U of T. Like, I guess it's the best of both worlds because you get, or it's a lot of the good parts of both worlds in terms of breadth and also in terms of depth, because you're really pursuing one research project at the end. But yeah, to get the industry experience and also, I guess, get guidance from U of T supervisors and industry supervisors, that really helps bridge the gap. And then, of course, in every new job, there's going to be things that you don't know. And at that point, it's really looking towards more experienced team members and others in the field too, making connections along the way. Those really help. I mean, from the business side and also from the technical side, I think having a good team always helps build or fill in the gaps as well.
Thanks. So it looks like you were really happy with your education and the gaps you were able to fill.
Yeah, I can add on to Christine said. I think the internships opportunity are really important for me to bridge the gap between what I learned at school during courses into something that's actually used in the field. I know U of T, I mean, provide those kind of opportunities. I also take advantage of that. So it is something really important for us. The other thing I think what I really, like looking back from my education, what I found very useful, what I learned is basically the ability of problem solving. It's not necessarily any skills or any coding languages that I learned at school that's are particularly useful. Of course, they're useful, but the ability for us to actually, when giving a problem, to look for the necessary resources, the necessary either papers or documentations or tech reports, and to produce the things, extract the material out of several documents and extract the things that are necessary, relevant to us, to our use case. It's a skill that's I think get me to able to quickly work on a problem and produce something out. This is something I think I developed in many of the courses when I was at U of T, but as well as in my internships.
Interesting. Great.
Thanks so much for talking about that. So a lot of our students are obviously in the position of either looking for internships, as you mentioned, or for full-time roles after they graduate. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about any advice that you might have for students on what they can do to improve their chances of securing a position, and also what things that employers like yours typically look for in prospective applicants.
Maybe I'll give one advice. I'll let Christine add if there's any. The one thing I think is very useful for me personally, and also for many other my peers, is the connections you build is really important, especially during the current stage where everyone is basically on the screen, right? You don't have real actually connections with others in the physical world. So kind of building up the online connection on either on platforms like LinkedIn is something very helpful. I know that hiring managers sometimes post all of roles on their personal webpage. So getting to know the person you want to work with, or getting to know the company or the product that you want to work with, and to see what they are currently talking about, to see what they are interested in, and actually find your advantages to fit to their requirements is something I found very helpful when we want to search a job. So tailor your skill sets to what the thing you want to work on, and also making personal connections with them will absolutely make sure your resume will stand out from hundreds of other resumes on the system, right? Yeah. So using LinkedIn is a thing to do.
Yeah, I think to increase chances, it's also very useful to either, I guess, join some institutes, or I guess if U of T provides institutes like Vector or Mila, or like various other groups, just because you get access to, I guess, peers who are similar, I guess, like they're interested in similar things. You get access to probably more guidance or I guess resources like that. But other than that, yeah, internships are definitely something that I guess help a lot. If you, I guess, even before that point, to really show or demonstrate that you are interested in like the research experience, and that you're interested in problem solving and learning new things. So I think, especially in the field of, I guess, AI, machine learning, the field is really growing, and new research comes out all the time. So I think having a fundamental knowledge of the field is of course necessary, but really just showing that you're open to learning is very important, just because like that's something that you'll have to do for the rest of your career. And also, I think people who are, especially for us, like I guess, industry applications or applied research in industry, it's especially important for people who, I guess it's important to show that you're open to learning about the business as well, and not just the technical aspects. So being in an applied role, of course, it's just focusing on modeling is obviously important, but yeah, just like showing openness to learning about what you're applying it to definitely is something valuable. And yeah, I mean, just in terms of what you can do maybe extracurricularly, often I find people who stand out are usually trying to solve problems, maybe, I guess, yeah, just trying to find problems that you'd like to solve, and then applying your academic like knowledge and things to real world problems. That, I mean, it might be something like, let's say it could be climate related, just something that you're interested in pursuing. So that really shows that you're interested, and you spend your own time doing those things. And of course it helps your learning as well. So it's good in both ways.
That's great advice. Thank you. Just before we move on to our last question, I want to remind our participants that you can ask any questions that you want us to ask. There's both the chat and there's also the Q&A function. I think the Q&A function you can also ask anonymously if you're a little shy. So we'll give people an opportunity to do that now while we go on to our last question.
Yeah, and our last question is really just, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share before we get into the participant questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's not advertisement, but I think right now is really actually a really good time to look at those fintech opportunities out there. As we're seeing, like, the bank is innovating on itself, but also there will be a lot of outsiders that are joining the financial industry. As I said, the tech companies, they are really looking at those big pies and to see how they can make the pie bigger and also get a part of it. And also, BMO is actually, we have a plan, like 2025 plan, where we're going to digitalize our banking and make the bank AI first, in a sense that really embrace a lot of the AI technologies and produce the output that fits everyone. So a lot of the path is not set yet. So this is a new area for everyone, including us. We are excited, and also I think from more broader term, the financial industry is evolving to including more people from the engineering side, from the technology side, to make sure it will survive or it will thrive like in the next decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's definitely a great time to be in AI, considering that's a growing field. And there's, yeah, like Baiwu said, it's a very new field. So, I mean, you almost have the chance to shape what it's going to look like in the future, even like each of us. Yeah, and also whether you're interested in, I guess, research, pursuing the latest like state of the art, maybe doing applied research, or just even like deploying and implementing models. There's a lot of room to be doing great work. And then in terms of the financial industry in general, I think it really seems to be warming up to AI. As we can see, I guess AI has been used in a lot of different areas already. And now that the bank is focusing more on maybe the more current issues, focusing on social good, focusing on privacy and things like that, it's very encouraging for people who are working in the industry to see that we're actually tackling important issues like that. So definitely, I think the outlook is very good, and we're very excited to be part of this.
So now going through our participant questions, we've received one question. One of our participants is wondering if you know anything about what other banks are doing in this area. So they've heard about other banks using AI on trading, using reinforcement learning and stuff like that, but they don't really know. So are there any initiatives that you know from other banks that you'd like to share? You don't have to name the bank, just if you know what they're working on for the sake of our participants.
Yeah. I guess like for the banks, like I would say the 5 banks in Canada, every one of them have this AI division now. As the participant said, like RBC is working on some trading platform that use AI to recommend basically trading products for the customer. Besides of banking, there's a lot of hedge funds, and also there will be investment banking. They do more investment side, and they are more aggregating. I know like Bloomberg does that. Like, they aggregating a lot of the news and automatically produce them, and just to figure out what's the next immediate news that will produce downturn or upturn in the stock market, and they will make profit out of it in the very short term, like high frequency trading. That part also requires a lot of AI knowledge. How do you make the decision decisively with confidence in a very short of time that will make a big profit if you get it, but will also make you lose a lot of money if you didn't. A lot of things on stake. So they do work on those parts, and also there's a very high requirement for high efficient infrastructure for such computations.
So another student has asked, they're currently applying for PEY opportunities, and they're wondering if BMO has PEY opportunities.
Christine, like you.
Sorry, what's PEY?
Oh,
it's so a co-op.
I see. I think BMO usually does have some co-op opportunities available for different teams across, I guess, different analytics teams across the bank. I think our team specifically right now doesn't like hasn't opened a PY opportunity, but definitely like visiting the BMO website is a good place to start.
There's also another question from someone who says, what if a student doesn't have a computer science background? So it's a STEM student, so it's within the engineering field, but not a computer science background. What opportunities do you think there might be for that student?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in terms of AI specific jobs, there's still a lot of opportunity for, and actually it's good that people have a lot of other, I guess, have background knowledge in other fields, because it really brings in new ideas. I mean, I guess like Baiwu was mentioning earlier, it's probably like if you have strengths in one area, it's probably easiest if you do apply to something in that field. But definitely it's not, I would say it's not a hindrance for sure. If you, I guess if you want to do some of the modeling work, then you can really use that, I guess, your knowledge from other fields to enhance what your I guess enhance what your resume looks like, and also to set yourself apart from others. If you're not looking for a technical role necessarily, there's still a lot of like product management roles surrounding the AI capabilities or the AI like functionalities that you can build. So I mean, all the typical things that are related with like developing software, developing anything or creating products, like those roles are all still very valuable to the field. And just like any others, like you would have to learn more about, I guess you would have to learn more about AI and get that sort of domain knowledge under your belt. But yeah, no, like all the other surrounding roles are definitely still available.
I just want to add, since we are from the modeling team, this talk is absolutely biased towards like modeling work and CS work. But as we said, BMO is not only BMO, the AI, every bank's AI initiative is actually pretty big, so it involves multiple people. It's like modeling is one part of it. We interact on a pretty much daily basis with those business people, and that will be product managers. That will be like business analysts. They also have to deal with adaptation to AI and making sure whatever product we're producing actually making goods out of the bank for the bank, right? So those people are definitely many positions that are related to AI, but not directly working on modeling specifics of AI models, basically.
Interesting. So I think there's another question. Alex, are you gonna ask that?
Sorry, my mic was muted there. We have another question from a student who is asking if you have any advice for people who might want to switch from applied artificial intelligence roles into research AI after they graduate.
I think so. Some of the examples from, I guess Baiwu and I are not examples of this, but a lot of friends from my cohort actually, I mean, we were in the applied program together, and then I guess they sort of worked on a whole bunch of different projects, touched a lot of different fields, and then found one that they were very passionate about. And then they went on to do PhDs in that area or transitioned to a more like pure research role. So it's definitely possible. I've seen examples of that happen. I mean, it's best if you do. I think it's actually beneficial to go into the industry, do some applied work and see what you're interested in, at least some internships, or like just to see what you're actually interested in, and then pursue that longer term for research. But yeah, no, definitely possible.
And also, teams like our team, like where we do apply research, we also like we're currently actually working on like papers actually to get it published on things that we discover and we invented that are useful from both the business point of view and also the applied point of view and also a pure academic point of view. So getting like finding opportunities to get publications is definitely, I think from my point of view is a stepping stone for future PhDs, for example.
And of course, a PhD isn't necessary if you just want to do the research work. There's definitely opportunities for that as well. So even just within our group, like Baiwu said, like we do, I guess in the past we've done some computer I guess, computer vision research that isn't related to the bank really. It's important also, I guess, for our group to explore what is possible and like push the boundaries at times, and then at other times we try to take those models into production. So I would say a lot of applied roles are probably a mix of both.
Very interesting. And as you say, a lot of the applied work is actually ending up being published as well. So for those who are interested in that, there's that opportunity. I don't see any new questions, and we're almost running out of time. I just want to thank you both and thank all our attendees today. I personally totally enjoyed this seminar and learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. So really want to thank you both sincerely for your time, and hopefully we'll be in touch if our students have any further questions from you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.